What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mentor Nation podcast. I am your host, John Abbas, and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're spending some time with me today. You will not be disappointed. If you are watching this episode on YouTube, real quick, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications. Same thing if you're just listening to this on Apple or Google. That way you're just updated every single week. You don't want to miss, because I have some really, really crazy, awesome, incredible guests coming on the show. Now, today is actually unlike any episode I've ever done. In fact, this episode is downright crazy. And as you will see, there are several moments where I just didn't even know what to say. But I truly appreciate the raw honesty of this interview. Larry McClure has probably achieved the greatest success possible for any one person that I've ever met in my entire life. Overcoming decades of major addiction and crime to go on and create a happy, successful life and family. To me, that is one of the greatest successes on earth. I've known Larry for a few years now, and although I knew he struggled with addiction, I did not know the degree of the struggle, and I did not know the story behind it. I was blown away. After months, so how this interview happened is after months of seeing him every single day make a Facebook post. And his post was always the same thing. Today is the greatest day of my life. Every single day he would make that post. And I thought it was extremely inspiring. And I knew for him to make that post, he had to be on the road to recovery and he had to be doing really, really well. And so I reached out to him and I asked him if he would be willing to do an interview because I was just very inspired. And I asked him personally to take the gloves off and share the lessons that he learned overcoming, what he went through. And although this interview is shocking, there are some incredible lessons that I feel you will gain so much value from, because we all struggle with something, right? Like everyone I know struggles with something. And to me, listening to other people's journeys of overcoming those obstacles, many times that gives us the courage to overcome our own obstacles. So I'm proud to say Larry is a friend and he and his family are doing fantastic. So please sit back and enjoy this awesome interview. All right, Larry McClure, we are recording. Hey, man, listen, welcome to the show and thank you for being a guest today. I'm excited to have you on, man.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so I want to give the audience a little bit of context. To me personally, this is a very special episode because you have achieved a success that is very different than what most people are probably expecting with this interview today. In my opinion, and I've always believed this. I've always believed that real success is it's just overcoming anything or something extremely difficult to get what you want, right? And there are few things that I personally can think of that are more difficult than being clean and sober and maintaining that for a long period of time when you've spent many, many years just with addiction controlling you and controlling your life. And so I want to share a little bit about the audience. So me and you, we've known each other for some years now and we've done business together. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, man, in the early days, I just remember how sharp you were and how outgoing you were and how focused you were. And, we were doing business and you were just on fire. And then you would disappear for like a month. And that's when I found out, right, that you were going through some of those battles and struggles. And, fast forward, we lost really touch for several years. And over the last few months, man, I've been getting on Facebook and every day I see you post the same thing. And I didn't think anything of it for, I don't know, maybe a month or two, but every day it's like, today is the greatest day of my life. Today is the great. And, you don't see that when everybody else is posting all this negative shit everywhere, blaming everybody. Like you're posting that same thing every single day. And after a while, man, I was up one night and I was just thinking about it and how inspiring it was. And you talk about it on social media, how you overcame addiction and how you've been sober for what, 20 months now?
20 months. Correct.
Yeah, yep. 20 months. And so I wanted to bring you on, man, and I wanted to have you share your story, what you've learned, how you're, because I believe a lot of people listening have their own addictions that they're battling. It doesn't
Right.
have to be drugs. It could be alcohol. It could be addiction to self-sabotage, addiction to negative events in society. I mean, there's a million types of addictions. And so I just really want to dive into your journey, your failures, successes, losses, gains, and it just have you share how you finally overcame and triumphed. So let's go back, man. Tell me a little bit, just share with everybody a little bit about your story. What was childhood like? And then when did you first get into doing drugs?
Sure. Um, let's see. Well, I don't think I had the most ideal childhood, but I mean, it was what it was. I mean, my earliest memory was 4 or 5 years old. I know, but my dad was like a heroin dealer. There was a lot of violence. There was a lot of drugs. A guy blew off his head in the living room, and there was
You saw that?
I watched my dad get pretty much weekly out in the yard. He'd get beat down, baton. That was when they used to use batons, the cops, instead of tasers. It would baton him unconscious, and I just watch it, and that was kind of my earliest memory of my only memories of childhood. He used to beat the hell out of my mom. My mom used to run through the house. She'd make me stand by the door until she got free from him, and then she'd grab the keys and throw me in. We'd jump in the car and split, and she'd be back to him. A couple of days later, we stayed in a couple of hotels for a couple of nights. So it was a little strange. So but they had divorced. My dad kind of got out of the picture a little bit, and she remarried. And from that point, my stepfather, he was an Hispanic guy with a big family. We were Irish, they were Hispanic, and it was two drinking cultures that kind of connected there. But so I learned all the quinceañeras and menudo on Sunday, and we did a lot of camping, family time together. But it was definitely an alcoholic home. I mean, it was definitely alcoholic home. So I started nipping at the old 100-year-old Jim Beam that they used to keep around, pretty early. I mean, I was like in third grade or something,
Are you?
But I went through a lot. There was a lot of early on. There was a lot of, and I hope my mom never listens to this. I don't want her to feel guilty for any of this, but I was raped by men three different times. Once in a dump at at a trailer we used to live out in we used to have 5 acres, and for some reason my parents let this family stay there. And one of the guys he took me and we had a dump. So we burned our all of our trash inside of we had a tractor, dug out a big hole. And that's where we burned our trash because it was out in the middle of nowhere. And I got raped out there in this dump. And then there was 2 other times on 2 different occasions with 2 different men up until the time I was 12 years old. And so all that kind of just played on me. I was, growing up in school, I hadn't gotten into really heavy drinking or drugs or anything at that point, just kind of dabbling a little bit. But when I was up until the time I was 12, all that stuff stopped. And I just real quick story, just to, I always look back and I think, why? I just feel like I've gotten a pass, so to speak, over, I've done a lot of bad things my entire life. I mean, I've done some horrible stuff, and I've been locked up. I've had handcuffs on 30 plus times. I've been in 3 straight jackets. I've gone, endless amounts of detoxes, rehabs, in and out of jail, pretty much just like a life sentence on the installment plan, just breaking my family's heart once again. But I always felt like I just had like something watching over me. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but when I was 12, one of the last gentlemen, he came over for my mom used to go to the bar a lot. Okay. And she had pool leagues, and pretty much nightly. So I was at home by myself most nights, and they'd come home, ripped, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, whenever it was. And I'd take care of myself. But she had, I had a friend of mine stay with me, and his uncle came by, and I don't want to go into details, but he was one of the guys that took advantage of me when I was a kid, when I was young, when I was about 10. And I had no idea I was there. My mom really didn't care. She just wanted to go to the bar, and she said, "You can hang out and watch us." He said he'd watch us, and I didn't want him there. But he took me in the bedroom. He lit a candle. Okay, this is just bizarre. I know this is kind of twisted stuff. He lit a candle. He had my buddy Tony leave the room, and he was just telling me he wasn't going to hurt this time and all this stuff. And I was just saying no. And then all of a sudden, the candle, like it completely. I swear that candle went to about 6 foot high. The whole room illuminated. It was like this. I mean, it was unbelievable. I never forget the feeling. I was terrified, but the dude split and never saw him again. And that was the end of the sex abuse. But from that point on, that's when I kind of started getting into I ended up in a crack house with this family that had about 12 kids, something like that. I started smoking crack with the mom and dad, me and their oldest son, I was in 7th grade and he was in 6th grade. And at night we play spades, and we started smoking crack with these guys. and I never left that house. And we were drinking Old Milwaukee's Best, and that's when it kind of started for me, and then from there it just was, I was an athlete. I was, I had all these big goals, ambitions, but I lived this double life. I really did. Like, you knew me as this, like you opened up with, I was on fire. I was excited, all this other stuff. And I had that, but I had this little handicap, and I was a jock, and none of the jocks knew what I was doing on the side. I was also a partier. By my junior year, I chose the path of partying.
So this was high school that we're talking about right now. So you're probably 15, 16 years old.
Yeah, 16, 17 years old. Yep.
So from 12, when it all stopped, did you, like, when you got into high school, like let's say freshman year of high school,
right.
like is that when you started to get into sports, or was it something that you've had since you were young?
I was in sports ever since I was in soccer, baseball. I was an all-star. I started playing football. In my freshman year as a first year, I played football. I got into basketball. So, I consider myself an athlete at that time,
right.
And I remember just being, as a kid and as an adult, frankly, I was just, I was scared of my own shadow. I used to pee my pants in sixth grade when the teacher would call me. I used to be a daydreamer, drifting off in a la la land. I get called on it. I didn't know what to say. And I would literally piss my pants in sixth grade, man, and I don't know what that was about, but that's just there's something wrong with that picture, and then from there, when I started drinking, though, right around that same time frame, a little bit later on, it just kind of, all that stuff just went away,
right.
It just went away. It gave me a confidence, and it just changed me, it made me feel a way that it took away all that fear, I just, as I say, made me 6 foot taller, better looking, Superman.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that, you're in high school and you're an athlete, you're getting strong, you're starting to realize that, people can't take advantage of you, right? Like, you get into a lot of fights at this time just because you have a chip on your shoulder from.
Yeah. Well, that's a funny story with that. I was a tough guy on the outside with my mouth, and I let my friends finish my fights for me. So I had a group of guys we ran with. We loved to go out and cause trouble. It was back in the cruising days, when cruising Metro Center, there'd be big car clubs and stuff, and different high schools meeting at Jack in the Box, excuse me. And I'd be a mouthy one, and I'd always get popped, and I'd fight back, but my boys would jump in and just kick the crap out of people, and I loved it. It was just, I'd stand behind them, but I weighed like 120 pounds then. I was just, a skeleton of a guy. I was always a real slim kid, I was always the fastest kid in the school up until about, let's see, sixth grade, I think, was when sixth grade, I got beat finally in a 50-yard dash. I was always high point boy. I excelled in sports. I've never gotten less than a blue ribbon, a first place ribbon, up until that point in sixth grade. So, but anyways, yeah. So but when it came time to high school and the drinking, I got a lot of fights, but I always let my friends finish those.
Gotcha. So talk to me about after high school, what happened? Sure. You're an athlete, and then you start to get deeper and deeper into alcohol. Now, what was your drug of choice at this point in time and senior year?
Alcohol, cocaine, LSD, mushrooms.
Wow. So you're already at some pretty serious stuff.
Yeah. A lot of cocaine and crack.
Gotcha. Did you graduate high school?
Yeah, I graduated with an advanced diploma. As soon as the summer I graduated, I went to jail 3 times that summer. My mom kicked me out of the house. I was homeless, basically. My buddy let me stay at his house, and then I just decided to go to the military. I had no other options.
Gotcha. Now, how long were you in the military for?
I was there for 1 year and 1 day. Yeah, I got discharged on an alcohol and drug rehab failure. I was in a treatment twice when I was in there. So it wasn't that all my friends, they drank like me. And we were stationed down in Fort Bliss, Texas, near Juarez too. So that was a bad thing. So I was down there all the time. Yeah. My friends were all buying houses or getting houses, moving off base, getting married. And I'm like, 2 days into when I got paid, man, I'd be down in Juarez and I'd blow it all on quarter shots of tequila. It was just crazy. So, but yeah, I was in a couple. It wasn't that they all drank like me pretty much, they all party, but they seemed to be able to hold it together, and I just couldn't, I couldn't stop getting in fights. I know you're in the Navy. I'm sure you're familiar with Article 15s. I got 2 field grade Article 15s, a company and a summary, all in a 2-month period. And that's when the lieutenant colonel said, listen, you get your nose, we're going to get you out of this thing. We're going to get you out. I need you to keep your nose clean for another 2 weeks till we get you out of here. Otherwise, you're going to get a dishonorable discharge. They gave me an honorable discharge. It was a Chapter 9 alcohol and drug rehab failure.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, I got lucky. I lucked out on that one.
Yeah. So at this point in time, I mean, you're saying all your friends were able to stop it. You were, well, obviously. I mean, dude, look at what I had no idea. Did not know you went through all that as a kid. It's just like, it's really, man, it's a miracle that we're sitting here today and we're talking and you have a
Right.
family and you're crushing it. We're going to get into that in just a little bit, but man, so I'm assuming that at this point you're getting out of the military. You've never dealt with that trauma on any level other than drugs at that point, right? I
Right.
mean,
Exactly. Right.
never told anybody really or anything.
No, not at all. I mean, I was, I didn't think, because I had people starting to point out to me that alcohol was probably starting to be a problem, and I didn't want to see that. So I didn't
Sure.
want to look at anything that had to do with any of that, because it was really my solution. And it was just like
Yeah.
I had to drink, to feel the way I wanted to feel, And so yeah, I had no interest in sharing that stuff with anybody. I didn't know how it was impacting me. I was very angry for a long time.
Mm.
I put on the show on the outside. I can get a sales job. I mean, I could sell myself. I had so many people throughout the years telling me, I was going to do big things. I mean, and the year I got out of the Army, I started door-to-door sales with a company, and I was merchandiser of the year, outstanding leadership and outstanding performance and leadership capacity. Like my first year, like it was great. I sold toys, like all this other toys and roses and stuff like that, door to door to businesses, and I was crushing it. It was great. But what happened was we used to go to the strip clubs at night to sell the strippers teddy bears and all these weird, these toys that they would buy just to make some extra cash. Started drinking. He would start doing some cocaine. I ended up coming back to the office one night in the warehouse I still had some of my merchandise, supposed to be back by 9. It's like midnight. They were still waiting on me. I got in a fight with the owner, fist fight. He ended up kicking the shit out of me because I was wasted. And so they kicked me out of the company. I lost my girlfriend. I mean, it was like all over one night. It just going out of my mind. So
how old were you at this time?
I was 21. No, okay. I'm sorry. No, I was 19. I think I was 19 going on 20.
Wow. So you're almost 20 today. Mm-hmm. How old are you right now?
I'm 48.
You're 48. So we've got another 25 years worth of adventures to talk about
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And believe it or not, there's some times in the adventures that I had some long, stints of sobriety. And I had my heels dug in, so to speak, with in the 12-step programs. And I was sober. Life was getting good. That's why I was able to build my construction business. And I know we're going to get into that, but yeah, some things changed a little bit.
Awesome. So talk to me a little bit about your 20s. Is it still just cycles? I mean, did you find yourself more like doing a lot more drugs and alcohol when you had a lot of money, when you're doing well at sales, and then it just repeats itself? You lose your job and then how does?
At that point, it didn't matter. I mean, it just, if I had any money at all, it was going towards, for the most part, partying. I didn't really get into, like, I went to my first detox when I was 17. I was a senior in high school. I almost didn't graduate because of it. Went through treatment, went to detox and treatment. And then I didn't want nothing to do with it. My family, they made me go, and I hated my mom for it. They were, they're talking about alcohol being a problem, all this stuff. And I just was not hearing it, so it didn't do anything for me. But when in my 20s were that's when I started to, let's see here, when I got kicked out of that company, and that's when kind of things started really going downhill for me. Right. I ended up, I went on a crack binge, just to run for, I don't know, 3-4 months. And I was just, stealing, robbing, just for money to kind of take care of that habit, if you will, that addiction. And I didn't even know where I was at the time. I was just lost. And I had my uncle, I had talked to him and he said I can come out and stay with him, but I had to stay, get sober. Sure. And my grandmother, she gave me $300 to get a plane ticket, or buy me a plane ticket, gave me $300 cash to get me started over there. That money was gone. I had $7 left in my pocket by the time I missed the flight like 4 times. My uncle was waiting for me in California, like for 4 flights. I used to spend it all on crack. And I got there and I jumped back into the same company I was with down here, and I hit the ground running. I mean, I was kicking butt. They a month into it, they wanted me to go to Houston to help run an office over there. And I came back here to go to court because I had a criminal damage. I just destroyed this sheriff's vehicle a couple years before that at the river. I got arrested there, and I did like some felony criminal damage. So I went to court for that, and I had to get my clutch fixed on my car. And my team was supposed to come through, meet me. We were supposed to take a trip to Houston. I hooked up with a buddy. Actually, I went on a date, went to the bar, had some drinks with the lady. She took her home, hooked up with a buddy, went looking for the dope, and that's when things got really bad. That's when I went into this underground world of just organized crime. Just, I was lost. My family had a missing person report on me. I literally had federal DEA agents going to my mom's house. I went to my mom. The only reason I found out, I went to my mom's house. The whole house is gone. House we grew up in. We were there forever. And I was trying to get hold of my grandma, and they said, your mom doesn't want you to know where she lives. She had some federal DEA agents come to the house and say they had a contract on your head. They were going to put your little brother, my little brother was 6 years older than me at the time, or 6 years younger than me, in child pornography, like all this crazy stuff. And they're telling my mom this. My mom just freaked out. And so it was about a year before before we actually connected again. She was terrified. So I was putting my family through some stuff back then.
Wow, man, that's crazy. So, and this is just me, having not been through this, and I'm curious, out of all the drugs that you have taken over the years, which one is just the worst? I mean, had the most control over you, and just, can you, like, why? How, like, was it crack?
It's just, I think it was heroin. Definitely later on it was heroin, but it was I mean, the crack and the coke and all that stuff. And I got into meth really bad. That's when, they were putting that missing person report on me, I started getting into meth really bad. And there was really no other drugs at that point. It was just all meth. I was so neck deep into that stuff. I traded my car for meth. I was hanging out in a house with it was an escort service. There was a lot of dope being moved out of there. We were involved with chop shops and, stealing cars. It was just crazy. It was just crazy stuff. And, I ended up when I found out somebody was going to kill me. Me and my girl, the girl at the time, she was pregnant with my son, and we weren't sure if we were going to have him or not, and we decided to have him, and we bailed out of that lifestyle, went to a homeless shelter, and we just kept trying to stay sober for the longest time. And it's just we get little couple weeks here, couple weeks there. I get a paycheck, and I blow it. I wouldn't come home for a week. So that was just the way it was for a long time.
Wow. So who was trying to kill you and why?
Well, I was living in his house, and we had a power go out one time. We got loaned a generator, and there were some clubs that we were affiliated with. So, I went into the lawn. We had this room, a storage shed full of fax machines and computers and Xerox copiers. This is way back in the late 80s, early 90s. And, there was a generator in there. So I just was going to borrow the generator, go trade it or put it up front for some dope, and then pay it back the next day. So I did. I went and traded for my guy, brought some dope back, was sharing it with everybody. And they didn't know they paid for it, basically. And I left that night, and I got arrested. I had warrants. Every time I left that house, I had to leave through the alley because the cops I always had warrants, and our house being surveillance. So I left the house through the alley, but there was cops back there, and they got me and arrested me. I went to jail. So I was in jail for 30 days, and my dope guy came to the house looking for me, asked me when I was going to come to the generator. And my girlfriend, my wife, soon to be wife, at the time was defending me, and everybody else was saying they knew it was me and all this stuff. And so when I got out of jail, I come home, and they took me out to the Sunny Slope Mountain, stripped me down, beat me with an axe handle, held a gun to my head, stabbed me. It was crazy. So that was at that point right there. I didn't know if that was when I was gonna, that was when it was gonna happen. I didn't find out until after that I had the supposedly quote unquote contract on me. So I don't know if they just didn't do their job. I fought them off, and I was able to get away. But so that's kind of the way it started with. I was like, this is insane. Like I'm going to end up dead. I didn't make any connection with me continuing to do dope, and that was going to kill me. I just thought these people were going to kill me. So I just figured if I just changed my situation, kind of take the heat off a little bit. And that was kind of a pattern that I went through. So I think that was 1995. My dad committed suicide. And I had just gotten out my second rehab. And that was when I voluntarily went to. I was with a company. I just started framing with Shuck and Sons when my son was born. And I was trying to just do something different. It was just a steady way. I was making $6 an hour. I felt good. I was out there working, and that's how I got into the trades. And I wasn't going to do sales anymore. Just going to, actually I was making $6.50 an hour. Big money. Yeah. But it felt good, and I had my son was born, and then I did everything I could, John, to, if ambition, if wanting to stay sober and wanting to do the right thing kept you sober, I would have been sober a long time ago. It's just, because I just would have. But that's just, unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way, for an addiction. You give up everything you love, everything for what, and you have no idea, to scratch your head. and then you go through those stages where it's like those sprees and you feel guilty. And then, a lot of people are just talking, they're like, well, just don't do it. I mean, and those kind of people just don't, it doesn't make sense to them. And, you know what I'm saying? It's a crazy, insane disease, addiction, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, man, I'm going to tell you a really interesting story. I've never shared this anywhere, like on the podcast or anything. So I was in New Orleans and I had, it was my first business ever. I was 23 and I started a construction company after Hurricane Katrina. And the opportunity didn't last very long. It was maybe a year long because just, repairs started happening and there's a lot of competition that moved in. And one day I was leaving the materials. We were doing roofing, siding, and gutters. And that was it. And it was me, my brother, and one friend. And I was leaving the materials place, the supply company, one day, and there was this guy. He was, addicted to crack heavily. You could easily tell. And he had his little tool belt on, and he was following me. He's like, "Hey, listen, man, please, give me some work." He's like, I work hard, I can do it. And he was really skinny, and I was like, "Man, I just don't have any work for you. I'm sorry." And it was just me and my brother. We were gonna do some gutters, and he's like, and he just kept pressing and pressing. And finally, I was like, you know what? Fine. I just felt really bad for him. And I was like, look, come work with me for today. And so he came out and he did the best work I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, he did what would take me and my brother a day and a half. He did it in 2 hours. He did the gutters on this huge house, and I was mind blown. And I hired him on the spot, and me and him became really great friends. He had it was wild. It was a wild time in New Orleans. I would pick him up. We would do work. I'd pay him in cash. I knew what he was going to do with it. I dropped him off. I didn't ask any questions, but it came time where I decided to move to Vegas, and I was going to let the construction business go. It was violent. I just needed to get away from New Orleans, and he wanted to come. And I brought him with me on this 48-hour drive, and he detoxed the whole way up there.
Oh, no.
And we get to Vegas, and man, he cleaned himself up. He got into working out, and I mean, he gained like 40 pounds of muscle, and he relapsed. And it just like, but he had a window of time, man, where it was like 6 months in Vegas. And it's funny, man, because I'm like 24. I'm living in a home. He's sleeping in my closet. Like, he made my closet into a bedroom. I mean, people are like still laugh at this story because it's just like, what was I doing? Right. I brought this guy because I believed in him, and he was such a good dude. And he cleaned himself up for 6 months, but it was in that moment that I saw what he was capable of. Right. Like, it's just like, wow, like there's so many brilliant people like you, man. It was just like when I first saw you work in business, and I saw how focused you were. And I wanted to tell this story because, you're right? It's just, you can't explain it. You could have the whole world going for you and you still relapse. And it's just, so I want to take just a minute into that. So like, you had your son, and obviously, how long were you able to like, what was your longest period of sobriety at that point?
Let's see. When my son was born?
Yeah.
Well, very little. So,
okay.
I mean, he was born in September of 94. I was sober I went to that treatment center in, I think, November of 94, September or October, November, because I was working for Shuck and Sons Construction, and there was my superintendent. He started noticing there were some issues, and they paid for a treatment for me. I only worked for him for a couple months. So they sent me to treatment. It was the first rehab that I was like, that I really got something out of. Like, I can do this. And then the day I got out, or 2 days after I got out, I found my dad committed suicide. And that was the daddy issue thing, in treatment. They kind of deal with those kind of things. And I was hoping to have a conversation with him, and I talked to him a year. So that was crushing, and then like 2 weeks later, I was doing dope again. So when my son was young, and then from that point, it was just this endless cycle of homeless shelters, just robbing and stealing to just to get a little bit of dope. And we'd have make enough money to pay for rent for a hotel, we'd have, because he has some cash, and
Sure.
we'd buy a little junior bacon cheeseburger. We'd all split it, and that's the only food we would get throughout the day. It was just all the dope. And but in 1997, we were in this homeless shelter, and I was on probation at that time. I tried to kill my wife. I stabbed her a few years before that. I went on the run for a couple of years, and I finally got caught. And I ended up getting an attorney. My grandmother paid for that. And like I said, at the beginning, when I was talking about, I always just kind of feel like somebody's looking out for me. most people go to prison forever for something like that. And they gave me an endangerment charge. I got 2 years probation. I was off in a year. I mean, it was crazy. So
what happened there? Like, why did you try to do that?
I got sober. My wife wasn't sober. I got sober. I went into this outpatient program, and I was sober for a couple weeks. And I just couldn't stay there and continue to get loaded. So I left, and I came back to the house to check on my son, and there was nothing in the refrigerator. I was giving her child support money, when I was getting paid those weeks, and I was paying her giving her a couple $100, and there was like syringes in the refrigerator full of blood and dope. I mean, that was the only thing that was in there, and I just flipped out. Grabbed a knife, and she came home. I was just, put a gun to her throat, and I ended up stabbing her. And so, anyways, it was horrifying. I mean, it was for her.
Wow.
I just put myself in that position. But in 1997, I got violated on a probation violation because I couldn't stay sober. Went to jail for 4 months, got reinstated. I got out, and that's when my whole recovery journey really started, because I was willing to do what I was never willing to do and listen to some people. And I went to treatment after I got out of jail for the third time. I went to a halfway house for 9 months. Everything was going great. My wife ended up going to a halfway house. She got sober. I watched our son while she was going through that treatment for 6 months. Everything was starting to like line up, and then we got back together, lived together for a couple months, and then bam, right back to what we were doing. Everything would we pull tear the empire down. Whatever little bit we did build up, and it would just be off the races. It'd be violence again, and in and out of jail. And then 2001, she got sober. Or 99, she got sober for 10 years actually from that point. And
wow.
I started getting sober with her, and I'd have these little stints of like, I get 2 years and I relapse for a weekend, at the horse trackers. I go to the horse track, drink some beers, and I go out and get dope, and I disappear for a week or something, or a weekend, get back into detox, get back at it again. So from 97 to 2012, I was sober for the most part of it. I just had like 3 little brief relapses, and then in 2006, I stayed sober for 6 years. And that wasn't just me just getting sober. Like, I was involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was involved in like 12-step programs, sponsoring guys. Like, I was able to build a construction business. Everything on the outside was always deep by default got better. I mean, because I'm perfectly capable of doing that. So I was able to build some stuff up, and it was great. I mean, we had money. I didn't want for anything. We were taking $10,000 ski trips. Everything was great. But
wow, because your construction business at this time, it was booming. I mean, you were killing it.
Right. And even right out of the recession. I mean, even when we had a recession, everything kind of went down. I downsized a little bit, and we started marketing to insurance companies, because they weren't impacted by the recession. So and I just started stealing people's work that way, and we became a lot of the restoration company's contractor. And they just loved the fact that I was the owner. I worked out in the field. Like, they had to deal with me. They didn't have to deal with the foreman and then a bunch of middle people. And then we had a lot of success that way. But it was great. And then but the thing with that is, I just want to share, was that my entire life, I've always tried to, like, I've never accepted Larry for who the hell he is. You know what I mean? I didn't know who I was. And I was always trying to measure myself up to everybody else. I always said, God, I wish I was like that guy. I wish I always had what he had. And I never was able to live up that expectation, because I never would have, because I was never them,
That's right. Yep.
And I just got to share with you that we may get to this, but 20 months ago, when I checked myself into treatment, I didn't have any intention of staying sober. I didn't want my girlfriend to go to prison. I just wanted to get the heat off. I was facing some criminal charges. And in fact, those are still like out there. They haven't been filed. Who knows if they're gonna, but there's a lot of stuff going on, and something happened on day 5 in that treatment center that I can't explain. And all I know is that for the first time, I just had I didn't have any answers. I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't questioning what I was going to do. I just didn't have anything. I was just willing to fully listen to anything anybody else said. I was told, Larry, you've been seeing life through a straw, take it off, man. Like, listen to somebody else's perspective for once. And I was always willing to do that, like in business and stuff like that. But in the back of my mind, I always thought I knew better. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just always thought I had a better plan. Like, and for some reason on day 5, on February 5th of 2019, I didn't, and I just realized that for whatever reason, I just was in full acceptance of me and everything around me, like everything. Like, for the last 20 months since I've been sober, I have not once thought about how I would wish to be somebody else. I'm in love with the life I have today, and the freedom, my family. Like, I wouldn't want to be anybody else but Larry right now. I just wouldn't. I mean, and wow. It just seems like that's just been the key. Like, I stopped trying to be somebody that I wasn't. That saying, it's like you get in business, and and in order to kind of become somebody, be something different, have the other things, you have to become somebody you've never been.
That's right.
Well, I kind of played that and I always tried to act as if I was in the past, and it didn't really work out for me, because I was always trying to measure myself up and compare everybody's outsides to, and my the insides and the way I really felt about myself really wasn't lining up with that. I was still terrified. I remember in Texas, we were at a convention there with you.
Yep.
You walked up to me and you said, "Listen, man, you know what, Larry? You are sharper and better than any one of these guys." Like, what? And I remember saying to you, I know, but I didn't believe that.
Right.
I just didn't. Like, I knew that I had so many people my entire life believing in me, and I could never believe in myself at all. Like, I would say one thing, and on the inside, it just wasn't lining up. Something's different this last 20 months, and I just was in full acceptance of just who Larry is, man.
That's awesome.
And assets. So
yeah, well, Tony Robbins says that. I'm a big fan of Tony because he goes deeper than anybody else, and he makes you self-reflect. And he said something one time that it really helped me understand, because my childhood was nowhere near like yours. My parents just, they divorced many different times, and they remarried, and they married like terrible. I mean, none of them were abusive. They're batshit crazy, some of them, but
right.
nothing crazier than that. And Tony Robbins, I was listening one day, and he's like, you will always achieve, your results will always be a reflection of not what you want, not what you need, not what you wish for, but of how you see yourself.
Right. Exactly.
So many people don't realize, they're like, man, I wanted it so bad, but I didn't do it. Or he's like, until you can see, until your self-identity, until how you identify yourself is different, until you can change that belief, that limiting belief, your results will always be a reflection. It's why some people, they can never lose weight, because they'll get into shape and they'll lose weight and they'll get cut, but then they'll always go back. They'll always go back to eating, because deep down, they never tackled that core problem, which is, how do you self-identify? And I'm glad you say that, man, because that's really incredible. So I want to spend a few more minutes, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I love the story, man. Like, this is wild. I had no idea, but can you talk about a couple of the other, like, just crazy stories? And then I want to get into the lessons here for people to take away, because there's a lot of people listening to this and they want success or to be a millionaire, and none of them will ever have to go through a millionth of what you went through to achieve that. Like, the fact that you can be sober, to me, I think that is 1,000 times more difficult based on what you've been through than somebody just wanting to be successful. And so there's valuable lessons on how you maintain discipline, some of the things that you do every day that I want to talk about. But I want to spend just a few more minutes talking about some of the crazy stories, because this literally sounds like an episode of Breaking Bad. I don't know if you've watched that show, but
no, yeah, I love it.
Good show. So what's it like? I mean, you have one kid, just one son. Is that right?
Yeah, I have some stepkids with my previous wife.
Okay, perfect. So you obviously have a family. She's dealing with her own issues. You're dealing with your own issues. Does anybody ever like take care of your son, or both of you guys just trading off and doing it like as time went on?
You're talking about over the years?
Yeah, just over the years. Like, did you guys always manage to raise your son yourselves, or?
Oh, yeah. Well, I met her in 1993, and my son was born in 1994, so we got busy right away. And then throughout the years, we actually didn't get married until 2005. So we were together. I think we were together 11 years before we actually got married, and we actually separated 6 times in between there. So we break up, we get back together, that whole thing. So we pretty much when she went to treatment. I had him for the 6 months she was in treatment. And outside of that, we pretty much were, from that point on, when I went to that halfway house and back in, let's see here, it was 1997. From that point on until the time we got married, we separated a few times, but then after that, it was, we were always together. So we got married, we were always together up until about 3 years ago.
So I want to so you have your construction business. I want to resume from there, and then I want to get into the next chapter. So you're absolutely killing it. What happened? Like, what was the catalyst that sent things spiraling down again?
Well, like I said, I started the business I was a project manager for a company for up until 2005 for 6 years. Well, I
Okay.
mean, I went up through the kind of the ropes. I framer, lead man, foreman, superintendent. Like I did some design, trust design, stuff like that. And then I was a project manager. So I had a lot of success there. And there's this. Have you heard of a book called a series called The E Myth?
Oh, love it.
Oh my
Love
God.
that. Michael Gerber?
Yes, it's brilliant. So
Brilliant.
so this guy, he talks about the entrepreneurial myth that just because you know a trade, you know how to run a business.
That's
And
right.
so I went through, and I was just one of those guys that was like, I was really good at what I did. And I figured I could just do this. So started the company, and I did have a lot of success. Like I made more money. I made over $100,000 my first year, and I was told that could never happen. So I mean, we did pretty well. So I just blew my former boss, the owner of my company, away. So um, I did. He was like, you're never gonna make, you're never gonna make $100,000 in your first 5 years. I don't know. You could stay here. I'll give you bonuses. Blah blah. He's trying to keep me. Well, I mean, 112,000 our first year, so it was pretty cool. So that was pretty exciting. But I love when people say that
That's right.
you can't do
Don't
something.
tell me I can't do it. That's right.
Right. So what happened was I had a lot of success, and up when I in 2000 and the recession hit. So that was kind of negatively impacted everybody. And we weren't like a big company, so we didn't get hit that hard. I mean, at the time, I think I had 15 employees, so it wasn't really that big of a deal, but we had no work, so I had to keep guys busy. So we shrunk down. I started marketing to the insurance companies, and then we were able to build back up a little more. But what had happened was, where our company really took off, I was in business for about 2011. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see, '05. Yes, about 2011. And I was working with one of the restoration companies. And one of the owners pulled me in the office one day and he said, I want to have a conversation with you. I came in and he said, when are you going to start building your business? And I was like, what do you mean building my business? And he said, I mean, you're basically like a self-employed, you work your butt off. You're always working. You're always out in the field. When are you going to start building your business? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I am building my business. And he said, here, I want you to do this. I want you to read a book called The E-Myth Contractor. And he handed me the book. Changed everything for us. I mean, completely changed everything. In 3 months, we quintupled in size. Like we had, I refused to get T-shirts for some reason. We didn't want to be like everybody else. So I didn't get T-shirt, like just little stuff like that. And we became like a company. And I started attracting other people, because they liked what we were seeing. We were just like becoming a company like everybody else, handing out
Right.
T-shirts. We had benefits package. We had 401k, like all that stuff. So I had about 59, 60 employees, and I had a bunch of temporary people coming on. And we had so much work. And I had just started, I relapsed in 2012 at this point, okay? And I went out and I started drinking, and then I started doing drugs. And the drugs was just kind of a binge thing, but then I was drinking a little bit more. And then what happened was I was basically trying to build my business from my office, which that's what I was, what I learned in that book. Like I hire people to do the job out there so you can build your business. Well, I was spending more time in my office doing drugs, and I was just kind of hoping everything would kind of fix itself out there, and just, and I was putting people in positions of authority that weren't capable. And by that point, I didn't care. I just figured I just kind of like put my hand over my eyes, put my head in the sand, and just hoped it would all work out. Well,
Right.
in 3 months, we had $800,000 in business, and we ended up losing $100,000. So we did $800,000. We lost $100,000 in a 3-month period. The business relationships that I had were just absolutely falling apart. I mean, everybody was scratching their heads going, what's going on with you? Like, I mean, I couldn't keep a schedule. I couldn't do anything. And so I started doing some crazy stuff. And what happened was throughout my little binge using, I started getting a little crazy. And there were some contractors that were refusing to pay me on certain things, and it was my fault. It was just like I would do the work without getting signed off on it and that sort of thing, and then, or at least I thought I did. I was so messed up, I don't even know what I was telling these people were doing. So I sat out in front of this one contractor's house with a butcher knife one night for 48 hours. I went home, but I came back, and I was going to kill this guy's wife because I hated her, and the husband was a nice guy. He was saying she's keeping the money, she gave him all his reasons, and I was like, kill her. And I sat out there with this butcher knife and 2 days later, and then she walks out of this house with this little girl. She had been 4 or 5, and it was her daughter. And I had no idea they had kids. Not that that matters,
Sure.
but it really just changed things for me right then. I broke down. I called my sponsor. He's like, "Get your ass over here." And I kind of got reset for a second. I stayed sober for a couple of weeks, and I went back on it again, you know. And then another contractor I've been doing business working with for 20 years. You know, we had a great relationship. He loves me. He doesn't use anybody else but us. And I had a falling out with him. And I sat out in front of his house. We built his house in Las Cindas out in East Mesa. And I sat out in front of his house with a 270 rifle, scoped on his house, waiting for him to come outside. I was going to kill the guy. And these joggers come walking by, this lady and this guy pushing a baby cart. They had this, like, you know, when you run the little stroller thing, you know, they came running by, and I was sitting there with this gun, and I pulled the gun inside, and I just realized again, you know, I'm just like, what am I doing, man? What am I doing here? And so I started getting real crazy with some things like that.
So let me ask you, I just want to stop you just for a second. Yeah. So, and, you know, feel free to answer this however you want. I know you're an open book. Like, do you think that this is the drugs talking? Do you think you really had, like, do you think you would have, like, let's say the baby with the stroller didn't come, like, do you think in that moment you would have shot him?
I don't know. I at the time that in those situations, I wasn't even loaded. I mean, I was sober. I was just out of my mind. I mean, I was in and out of binges, but I was still sober. I mean, it wasn't like I was shooting dope in the truck or anything like that. Yeah, I was really ripped. I was just completely out of my mind, you know, throwing a little tantrum. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I mean, that's just the way I handle it. And yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that.
Yeah.
And I have no idea the insanity behind that, even stone cold sober. That just kind of was a wake up call for me also. So I thought to myself, how I stabbed my wife stone cold sober. Remember I told you I was in a relapse. I was in like an outpatient program. I was sober when that happened. It wasn't like I was out of my mind, but I was only 2 weeks removed from the dope, you know. But so I had to really address the fact that I might be, you know, there's some other things going on, you know. I have no idea how to live, you know, without throwing these tantrums and wanting to hurt people when I don't get my way, you know, wherever that came from. But the business started falling apart, and I pretty much let everybody go. I wrapped up, you know, what I could with the jobs. By that point, I got into heroin. This was in 2014. Basically shut down my business, and I became a heroin dealer.
Wow.
And then when you introduced me to one of those other companies, and you came down here to Arizona, I was sober for 4 months. There was a 4-month period, and that's when you knew me, when I was involved in that. And I was doing yoga, and I was like, you know, I was just trying to, you know, I got in business, I got involved in that business, and everything was great. But throughout that, towards the end of that tail end of that process, at some of those events, I'm in the bathroom shooting dope. In fact, I got pulled over leaving one of those events with the projector in the back of my truck. I had a tall boy Mike's Hard Lemonade. I just slammed a bunch of heroin in the bathroom. I'm driving home. I got pulled over. I didn't have, one of my headlights was out in my truck. And I caught it. He didn't, you know, I just gave my registration. He said, "Do you have any warrants?" I said, "No." He said, "Get your headlight fixed." And that was it. I drove away. And I was wasted. I have no idea how I walked away from that. But that was, I mean, that's what I mean, that double life. Like, I did a pretty good job of kind of putting up the front. I would always disappear, like you said. That was the evidence. But whenever I was around, man, it was, I could put on the part as long as I could, you know?
Man, that's so wild. So talk to me about life now. You're 20 months. You're absolutely doing well. What's life like right now?
Life, right? It's absolutely incredible. Like, I wouldn't, there's just been pieces. I wouldn't change anything in my whole entire life, by the way. Like, I always think back on how, if things were different, like if I would have just took a different path, like if I would have went the right way, so the wrong way, you know, like where I'd be. And I, to be honest with you, I wouldn't change it. Like, every piece of the puzzle that's been put in to kind of put that puzzle together through my entire life has led me to this point now, which is just, I have experienced just absolute peace and freedom in my life to the point where I can't even explain it. And it all started back when I just went to the treatment center on day 5 in that treatment center. I'll never forget it, when I was in that room with a bunch of guys, and I was doing a first step in there, and they were getting honest with me, and I didn't have any answers. And I just realized that, you know, there's, you know, I'm meant to do bigger things than sticking needles in my arms and hurting people. I just am, you know. I look back on my life, and I have to accept that, you know, all my life I've had so many people tell me how I'm going to do great things. I'm a leader. But I was in the military, and they made me a squad leader right from day 1. and I had nothing to do with it. 3 days into it, I'm like, there's no way I can do this. And I went and told the drill sergeant. He said, "You're doing it." And I said, "I'll jump out. I'm going to tell you what. I came into this thing loaded on crack. I got off crack. I came in here to get off crack. I'm just telling you right now. I'll jump out that fucking. Excuse me, language. I'll jump out that.
This is
right
you
now.
can do it.
I'll jump out that fucking window right now. And I will fucking that 3-story window. I'll jump out that window right now if you don't remove me." But that was on day 3 in boot camp. You can imagine what my life was like throughout the rest of that 8 weeks in boot camp with that drill sergeant. He gave me hell. They removed me from it, but I was kind of got out of that responsibility. There's just been so many people that believed in me, and I just didn't believe in myself. But today, my life is unbelievable. I mean, I got a career that I always wanted to get into. It's in insurance. I just always wanted to sell insurance, and I just never thought that it was possible to get in, without having to build up a book of business, and you'd have to have money to kind of get going. And, with me just getting sober and not really, basically starting over, I didn't think that was possible. And, but I landed with the company. I'm having a tremendous success. I'm it's over $100,000 in commissions my first year.
Wow.
So the money's starting to get there, and that's all great. And we just got a house. We've got some, we didn't buy one, we rent a house, but it's one of the nicest houses I've ever lived in. My family, my son's living with me now temporarily. The COVID really hit him hard. So he just moved in with us for a few months so he can get on his feet. So he's got his girls, half the week over here. So we got my grandkids here. I got my family back. My mom trusts me. I got a key to her house. I paid back almost all my financial means, except for I have a little issue with the IRS still. So, but so it's great, man. I mean,
You need to write a book, first of all.
Yeah.
Just literally start journaling, and a publisher could turn that into a book. But second of all, man,
the best day of my life.
Yeah. I mean, you're so, and I believe this, you are meant for bigger things. I mean, dude, look at how lucky you are. I mean, I don't know anybody that could have lived through half of what you've been through and not either be dead or serving a life sentence. I mean, the fact that you're here and you're thriving and you're crushing it. Now, the thing that you post every single day, "Today is the greatest day of my life," is that something you do for yourself? Is it something that they recommend that you do in treatment? Like, what's the philosophy behind that?
It has nothing to do with anybody else. It's just I don't know. It's just I've gotten into. I just think from where I came from and the life that I have today, like I can't. Have you read The Power of Now?
I have read The Power of Now. Yes, sir.
Okay. So that during that 4 months when I was talking about before, when I was with you, when you came down and and I was kind of doing good at that point. Prior to that, when I was coming off that run, I listened to that audio 26 times, the whole book. 26 times. And then I 13 times listened to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Okay, 13 times. So back to back to back, I just constantly was just there's just gold in there. And I just and that didn't keep me sober. I mean, it just didn't. I mean, I was sober 4 months, I went back out, but that was kind of planted a seed for me. And the lessons in that, and when I got sober this time, I just meditation is a huge part of my life. And I've got on day 5 in treatment, I just started meditating 3 hours a day. So I would meditate an hour in the morning because we had time for it, hour at night, and then throughout the day I would just, whenever I needed to, we'd have some free time, and that's all I would do. And I kind of just I started that habit, that pattern, and it was working for other people. And you always hear about meditation. Tim Ferriss talks about it. It was one of the things I talked to Tim Ferriss. He was huge on that, and I listened to that, and I seen how these people and how much peace they have. And I just say, well, it has to work for Larry too, man. Like, it just has to. And so I've been really committed to doing that. And so that best day of my life is really for me. And it's to show the possibility for other people. So I use social media, as you know. I don't ever really post anything negative on there. I just want to create a space for that what's possible, man, for a guy like me. And I have a lot of friends in recovery, and I'm on these, there's new people coming in all the time on these certain groups that I have. And I just want them to see, that you can go through hell and come on the other side of it with freedom.
Dude, it's inspirational. It's very inspirational. And I just have a couple more questions, Larry. Number one is, are you doing anything different today that you didn't do before? Like, is there something different in this bout of sobriety, in this period of time? Like, what are you doing differently that you haven't tried before? Like, what makes this different?
Sure. It's just meditation. I mean,
Mm.
it was the full acceptance of just everything that I am and what I can bring to the table, my liabilities, assets. So it's just that kind of that I just really stopped trying to be somebody that I wasn't and
Right.
trying to compare myself to other people. And I don't know how much of that, how much of it, how much of what I'm experiencing has to do with me. I often feel it nothing because I've tried to, I could have lived to 10,000 years and efforted my way into this freedom, and I never was able to accomplish it,
Right.
and until
That's
I
right.
just let go of any kind of response to, trying to be somebody that I wasn't. And by doing so, though, just, I mean, just always, just this enormous things are happening in my life, as far as my career with the company I'm with, and I don't want to mention the company name, but I mean, just I'm having huge success there. And not that I doubted that I was able to do it. I can't even believe I got with that company for one thing. With my background, it took me 7 weeks to go through a background check. Supposed to take 10 days. I had to go through the courts. I had to get all these letters. I had to get, felonies dropped to misdemeanors, all in a 7 month period. I mean, it was a 7 week period. It was crazy. And I did it.
Wow.
I got hired, and so I just remember the challenges I had first coming in. I went to sober living. I was basically walking a mile to the bus, taking a bus to a $14 an hour job, taking the train, coming back home. I was making, $300 a week or $380 a week, whatever it was. My rent was like 160. I started smoking back again. So I had some cigarettes, I had food, and then I was broke, and then I got the job with this other company, and I was taking a bus. I was walking a mile to the bus stop, driving 13 miles on the bus, walking another mile to the office. And this was in the summer, and I had to wear, dress up, and I was doing the same thing coming home. So I was spending like, 13, 14 hours, it seemed like, I'm mainly on buses, 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 hours at night, until we were able to get this little piece of crap little car that I still have, by the way. It's got second and third gear. I love it. And we got another car too, but I love driving that thing. It's just a great reminder. It's just this little 2007 Hyundai Elantra, has second and third gear. I don't have a payment on it. So
Yeah.
it's nice, working from home. So I've been kind of just putting off buying what I want. So it's
That's
a reminder.
awesome.
It's a
I
reminder.
have just a couple more questions for you. Number one is, and this is something that I've always wondered, when you have had sobriety for a period of time, 4 years,
Sure.
5 years, and you relapse, what happens in that moment? And here's what I mean. You have a day, a Friday, for instance, it's a normal day, you're working. Like, what goes through your mind at that moment? Like, do you start with just having a drink first, and then you have this battle in your head where you're just like, well, I'm strong enough now that even if I do it, I'll be fine tomorrow because I've been sober for so like what are the battles that you have in your mind at the moment of relapse or the day of relapse? Like what happens?
Sure. So it never just happens like the day of. So,
Okay.
and this is going to be put in the context of like going through, because before, when I had no experience in any kind of recovery, like there may be a little brief stints at sobriety, just kind of white knuckling it, just like not doing it and just being completely miserable until you do. I don't want to go there with that situation. I want to go there with knowing that after going through like some kind of recovery program and knowing that I can't get loaded anymore, knowing what it does to me. And then, everything in my life going really good. Everything's great. It doesn't just happen like right then. What happens is I start to slip on what's working. And I'm a huge, like I couldn't have done any of this without Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm just gonna say that right now. Like it's just the reason I'm in the situation I'm in. I've tried everything other than Alcoholics Anonymous to get me sober and keep me sober, to be reasonably happy, and it just nothing ever worked, for any amount of time. So Alcoholics Anonymous really is, I just give full credit to the program and the steps. So, but it always starts with, I'm just going to use an example of when I had 6 years. Okay. So at during that 6 years, about the 3-year mark, I'm still pretty angry. Everything on the outside is going great. Like I'm able to build a business, like everything's great, but I'm still like nothing. It's not really matching up on the inside. I'm still mad. I'm still doing stupid stuff. There was a portion of time when I went out and I hired an escort, a hooker. And then 60 days later and $30,000 later, that's how much money I went through in a 2-month period on escorts. I was getting 2 and 3 a day. I was out of my mind. I was stone cold sober, just like sober in a program, and sponsoring guys, the whole 9 yards. And then that guilt, I was for the next 3 years, I kind of carried that, and I felt like a phony. I'm rightly so. I'm sponsoring guys. I'm not getting honest about anything. And so it just kind of separated me from the connection with Alcoholics Anonymous and the people. Right. I just felt like a fraud. And then so I walked away from that. And then what happens is I don't think at any point, hey, I can go have a drink. What happens is I start to think, like, man, I start to get that restless cerebral discontent feeling. I start to feel like I kind of need something, and it never happens right away. It's like maybe a year from there. But that whole year I start to obsess about it until it makes sense. Because if I told myself the truth, I'm going to lose my family, I'm going to go to jail, all these things. I've never relapsed telling myself the truth, ever. By the time I actually relapse, I'm always convinced that I can do it one more time and get away with it. Always. So it's that however amount of time when I start to think about it, it doesn't make sense. Then I finally it starts to make sense. I start to believe, like those Coors Light commercials with all the sexy women and and all this other stuff. I mean, it's just like, wow, man, just that it looks exciting, it looks fun. But for a guy like me, that's not what happens. I end up alone in Motel 6, butt ass naked with carpet fibers all over my body. You know what I mean? Like, wow. That's just the reality. But I never tell myself that. I tell myself, hey, I'm gonna get, I'm gonna be at the Hilton. I'm gonna have, this huge crowd of people around me. I'm an important guy. I got money. I got dope. I got all this stuff, and it never happens like that.
Right. So, man, there's a lot of wisdom in this interview, brother. You really shared some valuable things. So what advice would you give anyone? Because there's going to be a lot of people listening to this that, they're not going through what you're going through, but I tell you, almost everybody that I know knows somebody that's going through something like this, and they might want to share this interview with that person.
Right.
And that person may feel like they're down such a dark path that there's just no possible way. And you're proof, man. You are proof that you can go as low as as anyone on earth and get to the other side. Like, what advice would you have to somebody that's going through their own battles, struggles, addiction? Maybe they had a past like yours. What would you say to them?
That's a great question. I don't want to put any, I just think everybody has their own path. But here's the thing. Like I said, I planted my flag in Alcoholics Anonymous because it's the only thing that worked. It's the only thing that kept me abstinent all those years when I was still miserable in sobriety. But it's the only thing that's kept me, that's actually worked. And this time, going through that process, I just gave up on any idea. Like I said before, though, I didn't go to treatment to get sober. I got there just to get the heat off. I wanted my girlfriend not to go to prison. There was a lot of heat on us at the time. And I just wanted to kind of get that off, just kind of just breathe for a minute, put a little time between the next run, get my tolerance back down.
Yeah.
But something happened in there that I had nothing to do with. And so to answer your question, I just think it's just a matter of just reaching out. There's so many resources out there. I'm just going to lean towards, a 12-step program. I know that's not everybody's thing, but all I know is it saved my life. It just completely saved my life. And the other thing is, I just, you got to be willing to do something you've never done to get something you've never gotten. You have to.
Yep.
And then that's just the kind of the key in like a 12-step program or anything. I mean, if the results have always been the same by doing it your way, why don't try something else, man? You've been seeing light. People are seeing light through a straw, just like me. They're just blinded by anybody else's perspective. They think they're right about everything, and they just want to be understood. They want to be validated. They want all these things, and that's great. I didn't feel my way into recovery. I just didn't. I took the actions necessary, and it changed my thinking a little bit, and it changed the way I felt in the inside. But more importantly, it got me to a point where I was able to embrace things like meditation.
Yeah.
And that's been the game changer for me is meditation. It's just the game changer. It's just being completely okay with who Larry is in whatever moment that I'm in, and I'm okay with that. And for whatever reason, that's just opened up a whole world for me.
That's awesome. And I don't know if you know this or not, but you're really smart. Like several times to this interview, you have recalled exact dates, how many times you've listened to something or read something. Like that's pretty, even for me, I can't do that. I don't know if you noticed that, but that's incredible that you're able to do that. So, make sure you realize that, just That's brilliant. Really. Like, have you noticed that? Like, you're just, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, anybody who listens to Power Now 26 times, and then the seven habits of highly effective people 13 times, that's a number you're going to remember. So maybe that's the key, John. Maybe that's the key. You just got to listen to Power Now 26 times in a row, and then 7 habits of highly effective people. Maybe that's just what it is. It's just a piece of the puzzle that was just part of my story, and that's just what I did. I don't think I have much to do with it, man. I just kind of drop the gloves and step out of the ring. I'd be honest with you.
I love it, man.
Be on my wildest dreams right now. So you're right. On Facebook, every day pretty much, today's the best time of my life, and it just is like, it's just a far cry from the trap house I was selling dope out of, and with blood infections and ended up in the hospital and IVs hooked up to me and stuff before I went to treatment, and it's just it's a pretty good life. I got my family back. It's just great.
Well, man, I'm really, really, really proud of you and where you're at and what you're achieving. And I hope that you continue to make a difference in a lot of other people's lives that are going through things, who are maybe on the downslope while you're on the upslope. And so, thank you for sharing all the things that you shared, the stories, the good, the bad. I really appreciate you taking the gloves off and going into some of these things pretty deep and saying some things that, I look at myself and I can't imagine myself getting to that place where I would be open enough to share. So I just really appreciate you being that open and honest. And it's really going to inspire a lot of people, man. So thank you so much for your time today and just your wisdom and your story, man. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Awesome, Joe. I appreciate you having me on. Hopefully help somebody.
Absolutely.